Got this on. Great.
Are we starting?
So let's loosen up a little bit.
Is this on? Yeah. What's your favorite color?
My favorite color is actually orange.
Really?
Yeah, I never wear any orange, but I like it.
I've never heard of anyone say that they were.
See, I used to think my favorite color was blue because everyone said their favorite color was blue. And then I realized, nope.
I always said it was yellow.
I'm Lucah.
And I'm Dana.
And we're about to give you a brand breakthrough. So one of the biggest questions that we get in our work is about people want to do a few things. They want to sell more product, they want to have more customers, and ideally they want to do it at a larger profit margin. Because most of the issues that we see with the people we work with is that they're selling stuff, but on a tiny little margin, which means that after they've paid for everything and after they've got their products and all of that, there's only so much left, which means they can't pay themselves good salaries. You know, the brand doesn't go where they want it to go.
Right. So what can they do about it so that they can have more net profits and in turn have a more profitable business, healthier lifestyle? Probably would help them out a lot in their, at home and stuff like that as well, right?
And this mini episode is all about how to do just that. How to have a stronger brand, how to have more brand awareness, and how to do it in a way that doesn't make you waste money on advertising. Because a little bit about us. So I was a Facebook advertiser for about 5 years, and I ran ads for all types of things, products, sometimes lead gen. But I found that the ads, there's only so far you can get technically with your ad skills. And there's only so many things you can do with digital ads to get it in front of more people. You can put your ads out, you can retarget people, but ultimately your ads are only as strong as the creative, the actual advertisings that you're running, and those are only as strong as your brand, which is your understanding of what your company is, who your customers are, and what kind of value you are putting out there into the market.
Let's get started.
Cool. Yeah, let's get started. So, the secret sauce of brands like Nike. I, after all of that, got super into branding, this guy too, and this is information that we've compiled from working with a lot of different people, some of the largest companies in the world, up close and personal with their brand people about how they use their brand to basically maximize every single thing that they're doing, not just their online e-commerce, but just across the board, brand dominance basically, right? So Nike is one of the best examples of this, and they do millions of sales every single day, even during the pandemic when they were still doing that. How?
Yeah, how?
What do you think about Nike?
Well, Nike, they've been in business for a very long time, right? And over the years, they have built this customer relationship, right? Where whether it's partnering with people, whether it's partnering with, athletes, celebrities, they create some sort of, hedonic value, which we'll get into later in the presentation, about feeling a certain way when you wear Nike products, right? So
I'm a huge fan of Nike personally. I own a lot of stuff, and when I grew up, actually, my parents didn't like Nike. They wouldn't let me get their shoes or anything. Maybe that's one of the reasons why I'm a brand strategist, because my parents were very anti-brand, and so they were like, you can't have Nike stuff because it's just not the best representation. No Coca-Cola even in the house. So I think that experience led me to a lot to think about what brands are, because I participate in branding all the time. And so part of being a business owner and having, if you want to build a company that sells a lot of stuff, is to understand why people even engage in brands in the first place.
Right.
So there's only a few ways to get money in a business. So the first way is to get more customers. The second way is to sell at higher prices. And the third way is to have people buy more often. Now, the buy more often piece is probably going to be your biggest profit margin opportunity, because to get new customers is going to cost you money. And it doesn't matter if you think you're even spending money to get those new customers, you are. Maybe, I guess, if you're standing in the street and you're handing out product, you're not technically spending money, but if you're running the business, your money is your time, in which case you kind of are spending money. In fact, you're probably losing money. So biggest opportunity you have is to have people buy more often. And the best way to do that is to have a brand.
Yeah, you're definitely right on that. So buying more often, right? It's much easier for people that you've already sold on, whatever product you have for sale or whatever service you have. You've already sold them, they've already purchased from you. So if you give them a good customer relationship, right? If you give them a good experience throughout their journey with you, whether it's through, online journeys, through email, or if it's, I've had certain brands send things in the mail with their package, with the product, as well as thank yous or things like that. These things, it really makes a difference, because inside you feel like connected to this brand. And when people feel connected to things, they want to associate with the people or the brand itself.
You have a vested interest in people coming back more often. And it's amazing how many, I think, people we speak to that are so obsessed with getting new customers.
Yeah.
It's like everyone wants new customers. And as much as that's important for your revenue line, it's not going to help you with your scale necessarily, because especially today when it comes to product, it is all about that repeat, which is why there's a lot of businesses, even some of the largest brands in the world, that are okay to lose money to get a new customer. They're okay to be negative on that, knowing that they're going to have a great experience, that the person's going to have a great experience enough to buy again, because that's when things are really going to pump. Okay, so let's talk about Nike for a second, because that's one of the greatest examples of this. So they've got high profit margins. I would say almost 40%. They've got high profitability. They've got thousands of customers, which I think a lot of people want. Because who doesn't want thousands of customers? Especially if you actually believe in what you're doing and you care about your brand and your products. And they're hitting thousands, if not millions, in sales every single day. So why brand at all? So one of the benefits to branding, which you know, is its asymmetric return.
Yeah.
Is its asymmetric relationship on your sales and on your bottom line and on your customers. So basically that means that there's a small input that has a very large output. And this doesn't just apply to your company and your brand. You should use this like in your life. Like look at everything and what those asymmetric relationships look like, because there are things that are very large outputs that have very small, like very large inputs that have very small outputs. This guy used to play like pro soccer. Any examples from soccer?
Once upon a time, yeah. So in sports, there's a lot of different things you could be focusing on. Technical abilities, right? There's physical capabilities. There's the mental, so the mental strength, the being able to play with thousands of people booing you or cheering you on, with the media, with things like that. And there's also your intelligence, your tactical intelligence, the understanding of the game, right? So, if we're gonna break it down into a small component like physical, right? Like these players need to run for 90 minutes straight, right? They need to be in shape. For soccer, it's very important to have a very strong core, right? The center. This is what keeps you stable, keeps you balanced, and there's certain specific exercises like planks and things like that where you can really develop your core, right? Yeah. So if physicality is one of your downfalls, right, and you want to become a more stronger soccer player, that's one thing. You could have a small input of just doing a plank every day for a minute, and then the next day trying to do a minute 10 seconds, minute 30 seconds, try and increase your core strength, and you'll see a big difference on the field, because it's such a major component to the sport.
That's exactly like this, because a lot of people will focus on things that are very, very large outputs in their brand, but that inputs, but that don't have a lot of what they get from it isn't that big. For instance, your logo. It's important, but it's not the most important thing. It's valuable, but it's not the most valuable thing. And it can take a ton of time. Like the input that you put on sometimes making a logo for what you actually get from that logo is sometimes the opposite of what you want. So let's talk about another key thing in brand strategy, which is cost versus price. So even if you never change any of your pricing after this video, it's still important to understand cost versus price. So cost is what you pay. That's what you actually pay for product. Price is what they pay. Sometimes people will ask you, what's the price of this product? I mean, sometimes like people ask like or how much does this cost? Yeah. But they're really asking about price. Because the cost is what you literally paid when you got that product. Like you're paying your manufacturers, you're paying the people in your supply chain, and then you price it for the customer. And it's just a very important distinction because most people know, you shouldn't price things at cost. We've heard that if you buy something and it costs you $20 to make, don't price it at $20. You want to make sure that you're doing it more. So what determines price? So here's the equation. Price equals cost plus value, which we're going to get into in a second. So if you are trying to figure out the price point of your product, how do you arrive at price? You're going to take your cost and then you're going to add value, and then that will tell you how much you should price something.
Yeah, and let's not forget that the cost is not just the cost of the product. So for instance, if I'm selling iPhone cases, right, and I need to buy iPhone cases and I need it shipped to my house, it's not just the cost. Like if I buy 10,000 iPhone cases for $10,000, that's, if I make $11,000, I'm profitable. No, because there's a lot of other things that go into it, right? Are you paying for space to hold this stuff? Are you paying for internet to be able to contact these manufacturers to stay in touch with them? Do you have phone lines? Do you have Creative Cloud? Do you use Photoshop? Teams? Do you have Slack? Do you have all of these things go into your cost, right? And the value
is then on top of that.
Is on top of that.
So a lot of companies, especially product companies, they're struggling to understand why they're not making enough money that they think that they need to make or they want to make. And it's because they're only factoring in a margin on top of the cost of the goods. And then when they sell everything, if that margin isn't high, like ideally we try to get our people over 20% margin, ideally into 40% margin, but because you have all these things to pay. So it's like you sell all of this stuff, and then when you actually do the books, it's like, wait, why are we losing all of this money? Like, why can't I pay myself anything? It's because like the cost of the business is actually way more than you thought it was. Which is why you brand.
Yeah, you brand.
Right?
You brand.
Okay, so let's get into like one of my favorite topics ever, which is value. So as someone who's like been in the internet marketing space for a very long time, and you always hear with your content, even people are like the Gary V's, they're like, you gotta give more value, jab, right hook, focus on the value, it's all about the value. I had this moment where I was like, what even is that?
Yeah, what is value, when you think about it? When you think about it, it's a little hard, but
it is very challenging to get your head around.
Yeah,
but it's key.
And when you break it down to like what value is,
it's something that I've boggled my mind around for at least maybe 2 years. But we're going to distill it all down. We're going to eat the complexity and spit it back out.
Yeah. So let's go into the first example.
What is value?
Yeah, let's go into...
So here's our little analogy of Woody versus Buzz, the classic Toy Story.
Classic.
If you've seen the movie Toy Story, you know that Buzz Lightyear gets given for Andy's birthday, and Woody is very threatened. Now they are in a classic value at odds with each other, because Woody really wants to stay a toy and really just wants to be Andy's best friend. And Buzz really wants to go back to Space Command. Now, if you were to say to them, hey, Woody, do you want to go to Space Command? He'd be like, zero chance, absolutely no way. Whereas if you were to say to Buzz, I could take you to Space Command, he'll probably say, well, I would literally do anything for that. One of the first ways to start thinking about what value is to think about what people want. And that's that first level of value, is that not everyone is going to have the same understanding or value of what those are. For instance, there's that famous marketing saying, you can't sell meat to a vegetarian. So let me ask you a question. Who sets the value, the seller or the buyer?
And why?
And why?
I mean, this is kind of unfair because we know the answer to this. This is why we're putting this on. But it would, in this situation, your question, it would be the buyer sets the value, right?
You're exactly right. The buyer sets the value. Hence that you can't tell me to do a vegetarian thing. Starbucks is another great example of this because Howard Schultz, I think that's his name, famously has said, he was on, similar opinion as Steve Jobs. He said that if he had asked people if they would have bought a $5 cup of coffee in the 90s, everyone would have said no. Mm-hmm. Which kind of makes it confusing because it sounds like then the seller sets the value. But what he did, and what a lot of companies have done, is they've tapped into value that's already there. Needs that are already there that people don't even necessarily know that they need. So the Starbucks example, you're getting coffee, that's value number one, which helps you stay awake, and it fuels your day, and it tastes good. I drink black coffee, it tastes awesome.
It's already famous too, like everyone has been drinking
coffee for a really long time.
Yeah, even before Starbucks.
Then you get the great service, you get the amazing design, you get the color palette, you get the whole atmosphere.
I mean, at the beginning, the reason why they put the names on the cups was for it to be a more interactive experience. So like you're getting to know someone, even though it turned into this big fad of like always spelling the name wrong, and then that became a thing.
And then they put your name on the cup.
Yeah, and they put the wrong name on the cup, and that became a thing of its own as well.
You get to hang out there, office away from home, bring in some of that culture. He actually got inspired by that when he was in Italy and he saw that culture of coffee shop, which we didn't really have at the time. So all of that desire gets packaged into the value. Tracking so far? Wiz, does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense.
Phil, does that make sense? Okay, great. There are two kinds of value though. Bet you weren't expecting that.
There's utility value and hedonic value. Let's jump into utility value.
Sure. Basically, utility value, you got this light bulb up here, is anything that is based on what's called utility. For instance, getting from point A to point B, having light around, hence why this light bulb's here. Basically everything has some element of utility value in it.
Shoes, we need shoes to walk around.
That's right.
We need
cameras, shoot stuff.
We need glasses to see. We need gloves in the snow. We need scarves when it's cold.
Exactly. Everything. So that's value number one. And then there's value number two. So this is a painting by Picasso. It has very little utility value. It's mostly hedonic value. I would say art in and of itself is almost all hedonic value. Maybe 90%, which is, it looks good. It makes us feel good. It gives us a sense of pride and purpose.
So hedonic value would be more of the experience someone experiences.
That's right.
From the product or...
That's right. And most things have elements of two, but these things are very, very, very different because value is just back to our equation. If price equals cost plus value, utility value is way less cost driven than hedonic value. There is a cap to how much you can charge people for utility value, whereas there is no cap to hedonic value because it's all about what individual people care about, and people will pay whatever they think that they need to pay for basically to satisfy their hedonic needs.
So let's look into some
right?
examples. Yeah.
So this light bulb, maybe $3.99. Maybe you could ask people to pay $10 for it, but deep down people will know that it'll start to seem not valuable anymore. You start to say, if I were to compare paying for this light bulb $100, I don't know. Whereas this Picasso painting sold for 69 million.
Crazy.
And with basically no utility value at all. So there's something to be said, especially in the product space, of how people market their products and how people talk about them. Like, we go to so many websites and it's just like a list of features.
Another good example is like, why are shoes at Payless $40, all of them between $40 to $80, and Yeezys or Air Force Ones or we could go on, Jordans or just
same utility value.
Same exact utility value. It's getting you to wherever you need to go on your feet.
Whereas the Yeezys, there's a lot more hedonic value there because you're basically being a part of a superstar.
Yeah,
you're buying access to exclusivity.
Yeah, exclusivity. You're part of an exclusive club, right? Which is what nowadays with NFTs that are popping up, and a lot of big brands are jumping on, brands that are future forward, that want to impact our culture. They're understanding that through NFTs, through decentralization, we could create exclusive membership areas for people, right? It's this hedonic value that you provide.
That's right, because it's driven by the fact that we like to feel part of things. So let's talk about another thing here, which is these little things for your feet, which go on your, maybe for foot pain. A lot of people, I find specifically dropshippers too, get into the e-commerce space because they're like, I'm going to make a ton of money selling a product that is pain driven. It's going to be curing exactly a pain. And people do very well in this. The problem is that kind of pain, specifically like foot pain or back pain, there's the hedonic value of solving the pain and what can happen after. If you notice in Advil commercials, all they do is talk about what happens after the Advil. All that advertising is like, you can hang out with your kids and, you can get back to your life, because they're playing on the hedonic value, because ultimately, it's only worth so much sometimes to cure something. And you can only sell it for so much. So in this example, this is a cheaper product, probably $8 costs, sells mostly on utility value. The solution to pain is built right into the product, serves your feet, but very small margins, because you actually can't charge charge a ton for it, which means that you're always gonna just kind of be getting by.
You have a cap on your margins.
That's right, you have a cap on it. If you build a brand around this, that might be a bit different. Now look at this bathing suit. This has more profit and margin. This bathing suit's about $700. Mostly sells on hedonic value, because the utility is that you can go swimming, but there's actually a lot of bathing suits that are like thousands of dollars you can't even swim in. I'm not even lying.
I have no idea.
And the solution to the pain though needs to be built in, right? So, but you get the very large margins at maybe 30-40% probably, and this is a bathing suit by Fenty. Now, what does it mean to have a Fenty bathing suit? Well, it means a lot. It means you're rich, or you like to, you're trying to be rich, which is really big for our hedonic need to fit in, to be wealthy. Some people will value it and some people won't. Some people will say, I would never buy a $700 bathing suit. And some people will say no, I 100% would buy a $3,000 bathing suit if it made me feel like I was on the cover of a magazine.
So you need to figure out who you're targeting and why. If we're talking about clothing, take the brand I know you're a big fan of too, Patagonia. They're selling experience, they're selling adventure, they're selling,
and sustainability.
Sustainability, wellness, being active, like camping with friends and family, things like that.
Yeah.
Right? So really diving deep into who you're trying to target and why your product is a necessity to these people.
Yeah.
And always keeping in mind the equation, right?
Yeah.
Cost and value equals price.
So here's one more example. So we got two cars here. One of them is about $3,000. This Mercedes Maybach is $250,000. Do you think that justifies a $247,000 difference?
No.
It's like maybe one has an aux cord and one doesn't. But I think the biggest difference why Mercedes is because they're not just selling the car. They're selling the whole thing that they've put out in their content over and over and over, that story that you're cool and that Mercedes is awesome and that you want to be in one because it makes you feel good.
And for decades, let's not forget, it's been been done for decades. They're sending the same message, right? It hasn't changed since its birth. And look at them now.
Yeah. And let's give one more example. T-shirts, white T-shirts. About $6 for, 15 to, like, maybe 6 of them for $15 to $20 white T-shirts.
Mm-hmm.
Hanes. Supreme also uses Hanes for shirts.
Mm-hmm.
And the last time I checked, a white T-shirt with the Supreme logo on it was $2,000. So when we talk about brand value, and we talk about like really making sure that you not that it's always about having the most expensive thing, but recognizing that people are buying more than your product. That's basically what all those examples are about.
Mm-hmm.
And really understanding what they're buying will really help you sell more stuff.
Mm-hmm. And Supreme, they didn't just throw this price tag on there, $2,000, and say, all right, like, come buy it, right? There's a Hanes t-shirt. But instead, through the way that they expressed their, what they stand for, what they believe in, who they like to hang out with, right? Supreme is big with influencers. That's what created the value, right, for the consumers to go and purchase.
Yeah. So let's talk about increasing brand value, because that's something that you need to do if you're going to be more profitable, sell more stuff, get more customers, get more repeat buyers, all the things that are very, very important. Brands give you the ability to sell more often at higher price points to repeat customers that literally love your stuff. Let me tell you what a brand is not. A brand is not the logo. It's not the name.
Not the typography.
It's not the colors. It's not even really the products. So these are just iconic representations of what the brand actually is. Because what the brand actually is a set of ideas, opinions, and actions.
Think of your best friend. Why do you love them? Why do you like hanging out with them? Because you guys talk about the same ideas?
Yeah.
Do you guys have, opinions that match, or, you can feed off each other? Do you guys work in the same industry? Do you guys go with exercise? What kind of actions are you guys taking regularly that connects you guys, or to keep the friendship?
Yeah, exactly. So there's personality, just as you said. So, take Joe, for instance. How would you describe him? Be honest, supportive, cutthroat, stylish, independent, smart. Did I say cutthroat again? Sporty, supportive, funny, competitive, flashy. Brands are the same thing. At least the best ones are. They are representing you, and you're representing them in turn.
It's not necessarily the clothes that he's wearing, the haircut that he has, right?
Exactly, which would be the logo and even the website, honestly.
Yeah, and
the typeface.
Typography, right?
Yeah.
So, although those things do help make up his personality or her personality, but instead, what we spoke about, which are the ideas, the opinions, and the actions of Joe that make Joe.
And why we like Joe. If you don't like Joe, you're not going to hang out with Joe. And it's the same thing. If you don't like what a brand is doing, you're not going to engage. And the best brands, though, are always doing something. They're saying something. They're out there. You could describe them as though you would describe a person, which is why when people stop, they're like, oh, I'll just put this logo and this color palette up. You can talk a little bit about what it is. Maybe this looks edgy, or this looks like it's for people who like punk music. But ultimately, you're never going to really be like a super desirable company unless you are actively engaging people in your personality. And it should be also your personality as a business owner, because one of the worst things you can do is basically try to build a brand off of opinions and ideas that aren't yours, because it's going to be really hard.
Amen, brother.
Yeah. So how do you even know where to fit on this scale? So there was this very famous brand psychologist named David Acker, who basically figured out that he studied like hundreds and hundreds of brands, and that there are 5 brand master categories. that when you're thinking of your business, you need to think about which one you fit into, and it's going to help you sell a lot more stuff. And they are. And I'm going to lean in because they don't have to see me. Sincerity, excitement, competence, sophistication, and ruggedness. And underneath those, there's a lot of other stuff. So for instance, under sincerity, honest, wholesome. Under excited, spirited, imaginative. Competence, under that is like intelligence, things like that. So let's think of some examples before I plot Nike on this.
What's a good example of a company that falls under the category of sincerity?
The one that came to my head was Cheerios.
Okay, why is that?
Yeah, because it's very wholesome. This idea that you're getting, it's part of this good breakfast, and even the circles, the O's, they're using like very strong symbolism. So excitement. Things that come to mind, obviously, just as you said, it's industry dependent. Lots of industries sometimes play in different spaces. Porsche, Absolute Vodka, it's all about party. Patron,
Red Bull,
Grey Goose, Red Bull. I mean, that's a great example.
It's a great example.
For competence, I'm going to lean in.
The first thing that I thought for competence were banks.
Sophistication, the things that come to mind for me are Tiffany's.
Swarovski.
Yeah.
I don't know why I did this. Hugo Boss. I was
that's how
say,
you. That's how sophisticated it is.
Yeah.
You just have to have even an emotion with it.
Yeah.
And then for ruggedness, I would say Jeep. I mean, even Patagonia.
A bunch of the American cars, the Fords and F-150s and stuff.
The F-150, because here's the thing. There's two things. This isn't in this presentation, but there's something called the branded house, and there's something called, which is basically where you have a brand top, and then you have sub-branding. So, like, for instance, that's like Apple. They've got Apple, but then they also have an iPod. Ford is like that, too. They've got Ford, but they also have, and a lot of car companies. So, Nike, I think, is under excitement, and I think is under competence. So in this whole value thing, value is not a thing that you can hold, it's a process. It's a process of going from one place to another. That is value right in the middle. That's where it all lives. And that is what we pay for every time we spend money. Every time we spend money, we are buying into a value exchange system. And that value exchange system is taking us from somewhere to somewhere else, and that transition is the value. And the more transition, the more value there is. So how does this tie into brand value? Well, bringing it back to Nike, one of the best examples of this of all time is Just Do It. Just Do It is so popular and has created them so much cultural resonance.
Right.
And the reason Just Do It works so well is because it's the epitome of value transformation. And that's the epitome of cash. Because Just Do It, they're literally telling you to go from where you are right now to doing what you want to do or what you've been thinking of doing, and they're encouraging you. And that is changing your life, and that's why you buy their clothes.
Being where you are now and where you want to be through them.
So this is a picture of Jack. Have you ever seen Nightmare Before Christmas? He is your customer. If you've seen The Nightmare Before Christmas, you know that he is from Halloween Town, and he is sick of it, and he wants change in his life, and then he finds Christmas Town, and he is so enamored by it that he has to tell everybody how incredible it is. And that's what you need to do for people. You need to know where they are, know what they want. Jack wanted more happiness. He wanted a change, more meaning in his life. And that's what your company can do through the products, through what people feel about them, is to create that more meaning. So one of the things you need to do, and Dan and I have done this many a time, is you have to ask yourself, what is our promise and what do they want? And you can ask yourself through a few questions. Do they want to feel active? Do they want to be popular? Do they want to save the planet? Do they want to be healthy? Do they want to be more attractive? Do they want to be cool or part of some subculture? Do they want to be recognized? It could be all of those things. If you can hit all of those things, you're going to crush it as a company.
But having the thought process and thinking of it more this way versus what do people want and what can I sell them is going to change your life. It's going to change your business. It's going to just let us know how it changes you, actually. I'd love to know.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, send us a message.
Definitely, because you need to be thinking about these things and then kind of like, reverse engineering them. You know, like if you're making a company that has parents, that's for parents, you don't just say like, hey, this is for parents. There's so many companies for moms. You have to ask yourself, what does this mom want? Mm-hmm. They want to be a better parent. Mm-hmm. They want to feel like they're supporting and loving their kids. They want to feel like they're saving the planet. Mm-hmm. They want to feel like they're all those things, and then you can use that in your brand communication. So let's talk about Apple for 1 sec. Mm-hmm. I used to work at Apple. It's one of my first jobs, and I loved it. It was like one of my first times I was really exposed to brand culture. Mm-hmm. And I remember even seeing a commercial one after I got the job, and I was like, oh my God, this is me. Like, I'm actually it. Like, I was synergized. Mm-hmm. What do you feel like when you see Apple?
Well, when I see Apple, you know, when I was young, I never wanted to work behind a desk every day. I always wanted to be free. I wanted to be able to work anywhere in the world and make money and do the things I want to do. So when I see the Apple logo, I mean, to me, it reminds me a little bit about having that freedom. How about you? How do you feel when you...
When I see Apple, I mean, I think of, innovation. I do think of freedom 100%. I think of creativity. Mm-hmm. Creativity is a huge part of our business. Yeah. So, and because this is all, I think the best brands allow themselves to be creative.
Right.
What about Wiz?
What do I think about Apple?
Yeah.
Innovation, style, synergy with all the products working together.
How about you, Phil?
Minimalism.
Minimalism.
Cleanliness,
right. Very simple to use, right?
Yeah.
I guess simplicity.
Simplicity. And that's a big value to me, simplicity.
Efficiency.
Yeah.
Especially for
like very utilitarian.
Yeah.
Especially for technology, right? The simplicity aspect of it. Like, think of parents and stuff. There's way more people above the age of, let's say, 40 that use Apple versus Android or Microsoft. Just
it took a while to get there, though.
Yeah, just because it's less. Yeah, it took a while because Microsoft's been out for way longer, right? So, but it's the simplicity factor. Even iPhones. My mom, she just wants iPhones.
Yeah, so easy.
She doesn't want any other phone. She never knew what an iPhone was before.
We got this computer. Let's think about the cost. Probably cost the company $400. What's the price? About $2,000
minimum.
And what's the value in between there? For me, status, empowerment, freedom, portability, artistry, design, community, approval, work ethic. Mm-hmm. That's how you get people pumped.
Yeah, approval. I didn't even think about that because, we got to see Apple's rise, right? We were old enough where we got to see it from scratch to like what it became. And so, do you remember when, I don't know about you, but when I was in school, everyone had a MacBook.
Yeah.
Everyone had a MacBook.
I remember when everyone had a BlackBerry. And it was like, no one wanted an Apple. No one wanted an iPhone. Everyone was like, no. And then when the iPad came out, there was so much hate.
Yeah.
But then it just brings all of this other elements to our lives. And then you're like, oh, okay, this is dope.
And where's BlackBerry today? Gone. It's gone.
So here's the most important question you need to be asking yourself with this whole process. Why should they choose us? Why should they choose to buy from you? Mm-hmm. And this comes down to our last point, which is authenticity. You can't fake it. This stuff, when we talk about being authentic, that's why doing a really solid brand exercise will really help you understand like who you are, who your team is. It has to reflect everything.
Yeah.
And then that in turn needs to be reflected with your customers, and they'll know if there's not that synergy. For instance, if you're trying to sell diamonds to one of your points, but you're using like ruggedness, but you're not selling to like outdoorsy people, and you're wondering why you're not selling, it could just be because you're not like authentically understanding your brand position.
Mm-hmm. And if you look within yourself, because the reason why you started this brand is probably because you're passionate about it, right? Entrepreneurs in general are very passionate, determined people. It's not easy being an entrepreneur. So look within yourself. What makes you authentic? What are your values? What do you believe in?
Yeah.
And express that through your brand. And if you don't know how to do that, there are different types of brand exercises that you can go through.
Ask yourself some of the questions in this. Again, why should they choose us?
Mm-hmm.
What is your power base, as sometimes we talk to our people about?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is the people who are just like the smallest amount of specific person that you could serve, and then build it out from there. Apple started like that, Nike started like that, most companies start like that.
Mm-hmm.
Don't try to sell to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
It's a mistake.
And don't forget that people need to consistently hear it, right? Mm-hmm. There's a reason why all of these companies that we named, to this day, like go look up Nike anything right now, their landing page today, or their social media posts today, or their blogs today, or their app, right? They're constantly transforming, they're constantly
knowing that people are in one place and they gotta get them somewhere else.
Exactly.
You know, Disney's a great example of that. We didn't even get into Disney at all in this presentation, but it's one of my favorite brands, and it has, you know, it enhanced our imaginative lives.
Episode 2, we're gonna be talking about Disney. Stay tuned.
There you go. So at this point, you have a choice. You can totally go at this alone. There are a lot of really great resources online. You know, look up what's important with branding, how to have a stronger brand. It's really your strongest barrier to entry. Hopefully we've shown that. You want to build up a good brand wall, or else someone's just going to come up with a product that's similar and just, you know, take you out. So it's
start with a good foundation.
Yeah.
Once you have a good foundation, just like any home, right, you could build on top of it.
Yeah.
To decorate it, and you can create other authentic stories with it. But just make sure the foundation is set, right, and authentic to you.
So do some exercises, talk to your team, ask yourself some stuff. That's one option, and you should do that regardless. Path number 2, feel free to hit us up. We love talking to entrepreneurs, especially ones that are trying to build companies, trying to build brands. We've got some really awesome workshops that we've taken a lot of people through. Worked with a bunch of companies over the last number of years, including ones like Mac and Clinique. So if you do want to talk about your brand and increasing your brand value and ultimately selling more stuff and making more money, then feel free to hit us up.